And Minister, you're very welcome into the chamber. I think it's the first time I've actually addressed you. I think we can all agree that at these times, desperate times call for desperate measures. When it comes to solutions to the housing crisis, we've certainly heard some desperate measures being mooted by some corners. Whether it's running the landlords out or the comrades seizing of private property by the state, many of these desperate measures seem to be very much from the stick school of thought rather than the carrot. That's an imbalance I think we could examine. Firstly, Minister, much has been said about the workings of the Irish planning system, and particularly the degree of which the planning and development application can be held up for or entirely prevented by a minority or even an individual, often serial objectors, or persons only marginally affected by the proposed plans, or, as the government often points out, members of the opposition. I certainly think that changes made here could open floodgates to thousands of new homes. I understand that the An Bord Pleanála is an independent body, but it is also the case that you are the Minister. You and Minister O'Brien have power. And while we know that the Department and An Bord Pleanála and the various other bodies which cooperate to provide housing in this country have their ways of doing things, and likely their ideas of how things should be done, at the end of the day, the buck stops with the Minister. And call me old-fashioned, but I think, and I happen to think, that the Minister should be able to and should be empowered to lead in the areas to which they have been assigned, rather than act as figureheads to take the blame when the best laid plans of senior civil servants go awry. So whether it's a ministerial writ, statutory instrument, legislative amendments to the Planning and Development Act, whatever mechanism makes most sense, I think that the near blanket green lighting of planning permissions across the country by An Bord Pleanála, ordered by your hand, would increase our 23 to 24 housing stock no end. I often think what I would do if I was the Minister of Housing. I'll tell you, I'd bring every single local authority into the convention centre with their senior planners. I'd bring An Bord Pleanála in as well. Each day, 31 days, and I would give an order. Go and build houses in those sites that are serviced straight away. That's it. Out there, do the job. So we have 500 housing bodies in this country. 500 of them, and 31 local authorities. The system is failing. It's seriously failing. We should be delivering thousands upon thousands of houses every single year, not 30,000. We should be able to deliver 100,000 every single year. So, to have a massive impact, what can we do now? The government likes to say that the housing crisis cannot be solved overnight. Well, here's something that can be done overnight. Declare a period of amnesty from capital gains tax on the sale of a house or apartment owned in a fee, simple to a person, a couple or a family who wants to live in it, not to a vulture fund. Capital gains tax is 33%, a third of a person's profit from sale, snapped up by the government, who had no hand in facilitating the sale at all. How many people balk at that idea and are put off all the work and hassle of selling a house they have no use for or downsizing? How many units will go to the market in the days or weeks and months ahead following this announcement? Do you know that, Minister? Sell your house, get the money, keep the lot. Sure, the Exchequer might moan a bit at the slice of the pie being snatched from their mouths, but they weren't going to get that pile anyway if the house wasn't sold. How many houses are being held on to? And all the owners need is a little incentive. So let's make them an offer they can't refuse. Current market value, not with a stick of more taxes, seizure or punitive measures for the crime of owning a property, but by throwing them a bone and making the sale worth their while. So there's also another issue, Minister, that I think you need to look into, the RAS scheme. If somebody is living in a RAS scheme and living in a RAS house for the last 10 years, I think that came in 2013, that scheme, and they decide to buy their property, they cannot get the mortgage allowance scheme. But if you're living in a council property and you want to buy a property, you can avail of the mortgage allowance scheme. So somebody is punished for working and trying to do their best by 11,500. They lose 11,500 that should be going off their mortgage over the next 5 years if you're a RAS tenant. Surely we should be incentivising people that are in RAS houses and to try and buy their own properties, because that property is going to go back to the state. So I think you should look at that. There's lots of ideas, Minister, there for people. I wish some of you would actually take them.